The next section covers the IMS PIC Business Rules. When a 5.8 report is submitted to PIC, a set of data validation checks is provided within the PIC system, and an error report is generated. For the FSS program, the validation checks include 2 fatal error messages and 4 warning messages that are generated by the PIC system. A fatal error message is when a record is rejected by PIC. A warning message indicates that the record is accepted, but that there might be an error in the 5.8 record that needs to be corrected. Fatal error message 1 states that field 17B and 17C must be populated. Field 17B is the FSS report category field and must be populated with an E for an enrollment, a P for a progress report, or an X for an exit report. Field 17C is the FSS effective date and must also be filled in. Fatal error message 2 indicates that there is no FSS enrollment record in PIC, but the PHA is trying to submit a progress or exit record. What this means is that PIC does not show that the family was ever enrolled in the FSS program. There's 1 of 3 possibilities here. The first scenario is that the participant enrolled in the program, but no enrollment report was ever sent to the PIC system. In this case, the PHA will need to transmit an enrollment record and resubmit the progress or exit record using Action Code 8, the FSS Addendum Only Action Code. The other possibility is that an exit record was created, but the participant did not exit the FSS program. In this situation, the PHA will need to remove the exit record using the void process and then resubmit the progress report. The last possibility is that a record was created, but the participant was never in the FSS program. Here, the PHA will need to just correct their internal records. No action is needed within PIC because the record would not have been accepted in the first place. Moving on to how to correct warning messages. Here, we're just going to cover what the statement is, and the rest of it's fairly self-explanatory. Warning message 1 states that there is no FSS exit report, but the enrollment date for the participant was more than 7 years ago. What this means is that PIC is showing an enrollment record that is over 7 years old. This is normally the maximum length of participation in the FSS program. The scenarios are outlined below along with the PHA action that are needed. Warning message 2 states that more than 12 months have passed since the last FSS enrollment or progress report. Here, what it's saying is that the annual requirement is that a progress report or an enrollment record needs to be submitted annually, and the PHA has not complied with this reporting requirement. Warning message 3 states that the 5.8 record is an EOP record, but there is no FSS exit record. What this means is that an end of participation record was submitted, but there is no corresponding FSS exit record. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that the record is incorrect. The exception is that an exit record is not required for a participant where the family is just moving from one assistance program to another program, but is continuing to stay in the program, and 3, the addendums will still be reported in PIC. For example, if they're moving from public housing to the HCV program. If they're moving to project-based rental assistance program, the PHA would still need to submit an exit report. In this situation, if an exit record is required, what it means is that an EOP record was submitted, but there is no exit record. The PHA will need to first void the EOP record, transmit the exit report as a separate submission using Action Code 8, and then go back and resubmit the EOP record. The reminder here is the exit record must always be submitted before the EOP record. Warning message 4 states that the 5.8 record is a port-out record, but there is no FSS exit record. What this means is that when the family leaves the initial PHA's FSS program or enrolls into the FSS program of the receiving PHA, the initial PHA must submit an FSS exit record into PIC. Keep in mind, this warning message will only be received by the initial PHA. The scenarios are listed in the table below, along with the PHA action that are needed. There's one that we want to focus on, though. Let's talk about scenario 2. In this scenario, the participant had poured out and is now under the FSS program of the receiving PHA. In this case, the initial PHA will need to create an exit record. However, if the receiving PHA had created and accepted a port-in record, that effectively blocks the initial PHA from creating the exit record. In this case, the receiving and initial PHA would need to void the move-in and move-out records in that order so that the initial PHA can first submit an FSS exit record, submit a port-out record, and then the receiving PHA can then submit a port-in record. For this situation, the PHA should contact their PIH coach, should contact their PIC coach for assistance. The other business rules in PIC concerns the sequencing of 5.8 and the FSS effective dates. A common PIC submission relates to this order or the sequence of the 5.8 and FSS records that are submitted based on the 5.8 and the FSS effective dates. The 5058 effective date is field 2B on the 5.8 form and reflects the date that the reported 5.8 action becomes effective and not the date the record was entered into the system. For example, if there's an annual reexamination record, the 5.8 effective date should reflect the date that the new rent takes effect. Please keep in mind that this 5.8 effective date must be completed for all 5.8 submissions, including when an Action Code 8 FSS Addendum only is used. The FSS Addendum also has an effective date, which is field 17C on the 5.8 form, and should reflect the date of enrollment or the date that the participant exited from the FSS program. With respect to progress reports, the FSS effective date should normally reflect the effective date of the action. There are some additional business rules that apply to the effective date for an FSS progress report. When a progress report is submitted with an annual re-exam, an interim re-exam, or a flat rent annual update, the FSS progress report effective date and the 5.8 effective date should normally be the same. When a progress report is submitted to correct an incorrect submission that was submitted on a prior FSS progress report, the effective date should reflect the date that the correction is made. For any other FSS progress report, the effective date will reflect the date of the meeting with the FSS participant that is the reason for the update. There are 3 business rules concerning the sequencing of the data. Rule 1 is that the FSS effective date does not need to be the same as the 5.8 effective date. This is different than previous HUD guidance on this issue. Rule 2 is that PIC only compares the order or the sequence of the 5.8 effective date, which is field 2B, and does not take into consideration the effective date of the FSS addendum. This leads us to Rule 3. A 5.8 record that is submitted must have an effective date that is later than the current record that's in the PIC system. So here we're just comparing field 2B on the current versus what is being submitted. For example, if a submission shows an effective date, if a submission in the system has an effective date of April 1st, the next record needs to have an effective date after April 1st. If PHAs encounter these sequencing errors, there are 2 options for correction. Option 1 is the PHA will need to void the record or records, and then go back and resubmit the previous records in the correct order based on the 5/8 effective date. Option 2, which is HUD's preferred option that PHAs use, is to resubmit only the FSS record using Action Code 8, FSS Addendum only, and then modify the 5/8 effective date, field 2B, so that the effective date that is being submitted on that field is later than the record that's in the system. We'll walk through a couple of examples that illustrate what we mean by option 2 here. One thing to note is that option 2 cannot be used if there's already an end of participation record in the system for that family. In this case, the PHA will have no other option but to use option 1 and void the record and resubmit in correct date order. Appendix 1 of the notice provides examples of how to correct for sequencing and are shown here. In this example, event 1 is that the family enters the HCV program on March 1st, and an IMS record was submitted, and a PIC record was submitted with an effective date of March 1st also. So looking at the table under event 1, HCV admission, the 5/8 field 2B has an effective date of March 1st. The next thing that happens with this family is that an interim re-exam was conducted with an effective date of October 1st. This is shown in the field below. 5/8 field 2B is shown with an effective date of October 1st. In this situation, both records will be accepted by the PIC system because that second event of 10/1 is after the 3/1 HCV admission date. Building on this example, now we bring in the FSS program. Here the family is enrolled in the FSS program on September 1st, okay, but the enrollment record was not submitted to PIC until October 1st. Looking at the table under Event 3 FSS enrollment here, the effective date that's shown on the 5/8 field 2B and on the FSS addendum field 17C is 9/1, which is the date that the family actually enrolled in the FSS program. Even although the PIC submission was not submitted till 10/1. What will happen here is that there will be a fatal error message and the record would not be accepted by PIC. This is because the effective date under Event 3 of 9/1 is before the current record of 10/1. To fix this error, the PHA can use option 1, which is to void the record. In this case, the PHA would need to void the record under Event 2, the interim re-exam, that has an effective date of 10/1, resubmit Event 3 with an effective date of 9/1, and then resubmit Event 2. Example 3 shows how to correct the error using the option 2 method. So this can be used if the sequencing error is related to the FSS addendum. Here, a PHA can submit an addendum with an earlier FSS effective date than the 5/8 effective date. So referring back to the earlier example here, we had the family enrolled in the FSS program on 9/1. Under Event 3, we still keep that date. So on the 5/8 field 17C, the date shows 9/1. But here what we're doing is we're changing the date on the 5/8 field for 2B, the 5/8 effective date, and we're changing that to 10/2 so that it's after the date that's currently in the system of 10/1, which is under Event 2. So here, by doing this method, the FSS enrollment date is correct, but the 5/8 effective date would not be correct. Again, option 2 can only be used if the last 5/8 effective date is not an EOP record.